Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Conor McGilligan channel. We are doing a recording today on potentially the survival blueprint. I find it quite interesting, and I am joined by an EFL aficionado in Benjamin Bloom to my, well, we're on a bit of a mirrored camera here, aren't we, Ben? So we're both a bit confused, but right or left. So straight off the bat, mate, how you doing? All good?
Good man, yeah, and this is the bit where we really simplify staying in the Premier League. But as I always say, Connor, always treat with suspicion simplistic answers to complicated problems.
A poet, and he does know it.
There you
So,
go.
but it feels like just in a general sense, Ben, when it comes to maybe the three coming up, would you say there's maybe more of an optimism from the general consensus this season that maybe the three coming up can stay up, or do you think it's a bit of a general thing again of the three coming up are going to go straight back down?
I think it's really bad. I think it's real pessimism, isn't it? And it's not the fault of Leeds, Burnley, or Sunderland, but I think people are so wary of the 17 and the chasm that we have to talk about, and the three dropping straight away. And Connie, you get these annoying, really boring general predictions. Oh, the three will go up, will drop straight back down. And you want to come with all the nuance and all the detail, and those people might be right, and it's very frustrating with where we are. I know we're going to go into the specifics on the clubs, but yeah, I'm sensing a lot of pessimism, and I hope at least one of them bloody does it this season.
Yeah, I mean, every single season it just feels that the gap is getting bigger and bigger. But I think I've mentioned this a few times on this channel that I think there is context to be applied when it comes to a lot of the six teams. And I think there is, for example, when you look at Ipswich, it was a side who bounced from League One through the division so quickly, and they got to the Premier League and were like, "Oh, hold on, we didn't expect this." I can't imagine there'd have been a plan in League One. There might have been midway through the Championship, but would it have been as consolidated plan as, let's say, a Leeds and a Sunderland who might have been preparing for this for a period of time?
No, there is absolute context, but look, we'll save my rant after we've done the done the specifics. And I don't want people to think I just spend my whole time on the internet. I'm the EFL guy who's just ranting about the Premier League, but it is a problem, and I just want fans of Leeds and Burnley. I mean, look, who am I kidding? Leeds and Burnley have been there before. You guys know, but it has got worse, and it is getting worse.
So let's move on. I think probably a good place to start is maybe Burnley. Obviously, top when we're discussing the three promoted sides. Interesting last time out, Vincent Company taking them up. What a team they were in the championship. Extremely different to Parker's setup. I think that once again that general consensus is that Company side were a little bit more free flowing when it comes to attack. Maybe not as focused on defensive astuteness, albeit them having a very good defensive record in the championship when they went up. But Parker was almost built on that defensive rear guard. Do you see them potentially having a little bit more of a chance this time round, Ben, with that maybe a little bit more of a pragmatic setup?
Well, this is where we go into simple answers to complicated problems, because one of the things that's going to really irritate fans of Leeds, Burnley, and Sunderland all season is saying, you know, and mainstream big pundits saying, oh, if these sides just concentrated on defense, then everything would be fine and they would magically have 50 points or something and be halfway up the table. And it's so frustrating because it's like, do you think these sides are not trying to be good defensively? Do you think they're not working every week on stopping the opposition and defensive stuff? And Burnley's going to be a great way of debunking all these idiotic comments, because they're literally the greatest defensive side in terms of the numbers that the Championship's ever seen. I think there's nuance to that, Connor, as well, because if you watch them, they didn't just sit behind the ball with a low block every game. In the end, the defensive thing, it kind of became a thing, didn't it? And then they played into it and almost became a bit more defensive during the season. But they were trying to control game with possession and territory, as Parker would repeatedly say. So here you go. Here's your example of a team that were brilliant defensive going up. But, and we have this a lot, one of the centre halves is not going to be there. So
Mm.
straight away, we're seeing James Trafford, who was incredible in goal, being linked away, and CJ Egan Riley has gone. I know Estev's brilliant. So we say this every season, Connor, that, and this is what fans of Premier League teams don't understand, that even to make, it's like keeping weight off when you get to middle age, right? Even to just maintain, you have to work so much harder. And for Burnley to even be on a level, we know straight away are going to have to probably drop a load of money on a new centre back because one of that key, partnership is already gone.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And maybe when they came up to the Premier League, they were thinking about maybe improving that counter-attacking threat. We know from sort of January onwards, when Marcus Edwards came in, you saw definitely a difference and a little bit more of a free-flowing Burnley. I felt Edwards pushed them higher up the pitch. He then, in turn, pushed the opposition
Was he on
fullbacks
loan,
back.
Connor?
Yeah, he was, and now he's
So
signed,
there you
which is a
go.
big signing. Yeah, big
But
signing.
even to stand still, we got
Yeah.
to drop a load of money, yeah?
Yeah, 100%. So they were maybe thinking to themselves, they're going to have to add a new striker, which obviously we'll get onto. But maybe they didn't think to themselves that they had to break up Roberts, CJ Egan Riley, Esteve, and Bashir Humphreys. Maybe they didn't feel they had to break that up. And now they've got to, because you got to hit the ground running, haven't you, with these new signings? It's not just about bringing these players in, it's can they hit the ground running? Can they hit the ground running in the Premier League?
Oh, it's so hard. But one way, and we talk about the general survival kit, one way you can do it is if your pattern of play is established and you don't sign 100 new players. You talked about Ipswich. They had a brilliant pattern of play, but they had a League One squad.
Mm.
So you essentially do break up your pattern of play when you bring in a load of signings. But look, playing next to Esteve is going to be good. But again, Connor, how much harder is it defending against Saka and Haaland and insert elite striker forward than it is with respect going to Preston and Oxford?
Yeah, I guess Burnley's what I quite like about them is without any disrespect, I think this is a massive advantage and will work for them in the Premier League. I think it's them not overplaying in phase, and I think Parker's drilled that into them, and I think that
Good
will
point.
simultaneously transition into the Premier League. I think the big thing in the Premier League is don't overplay, know when to go long. And I think that's a big thing with Burnley as well. The home record was impeccable. I think in the Premier League, if you manage to win 6 or 7 home games, that sounds gargantuan, but it's what you have to do. It is the blueprint, isn't it, Ben?
100%. And I know you're a Leeds fan, so I'm loath to mention Big Sam, but he used to be there every year with his data, didn't he? Oh,
Mm.
if you concede, what is it, 11 wins, no one goes down with 11 wins, or 35 points, you stay up 99% of the time or something. So there is that data, and yeah, you're totally right. It's hard to go to these elite clubs, and even the 17, mate. It's hard to go to Bournemouth and Fulham and whoever now in the middle of the table and go and get a win. So you're totally right. If you need 11 wins, it stands to reason, exactly like you're saying, that 3, 4 away from home leaves 7 at home.
It really does. And interesting. I wanted to throw a couple of names at you, Ben, when it comes to maybe transfers, what Burnley could do. There's a lot of rumours around Mengi at the minute, obviously at Luton, being almost a little bit of a direct replacement for CJ Egan Riley. There's experience there in the Premier League, Championship. I believe he was a former Man United product as well.
Mm.
He's got good aerial ability, a bit of composure on the ball, and I think in a poor Luton side over the past 2 years, he sort of looked, a little bit of a standout, really. And he mirrors a lot of what Egan Riley has, in my opinion. So that could be an addition. And maybe could you see as well, if big if for Burnley fans, if James Trafford was to move on, which is the
Ooh.
rumor, obviously, to Newcastle, could you maybe see them going for Michael Cooper?
Yes, that'd be terrible news if Trafford went though, because
Yeah, it would.
he was like, you just don't want to be going up. At minimum, keep your best players, or
Yeah.
at least don't lose all of them. But oh, Connor, mate, if we start the season and the best thing about Burnley, I know defending is a team pursuit, but you're going to take out the goalkeeper and one of the
Mm.
centre backs. I'm like, no, this is bad news. And yeah, you mentioned Mengi. People will balk at it, but my argument with promoted teams is okay. Name a name. Who can you get? In the current situation, but he's got to come into something solid, i.e., not an entirely new centre half and Goalkeeper combination.
What do you make of Parker in terms of a Premier League adaptation, Ben? Do you think he's learned? Do you think he'll be able to? And look, it's a massive question, obviously, because there's so many components here. The context has to be applied. There's a transfer window to go. What's going to happen? You just mentioned Trafford. I'm talking about CJ Egan-Riley as well. There's so much, but do you think he'll have learned from his previous stint in the Premier League? And do you think from your perspective he's capable enough to manage Burnley in the Premier League?
I'm just waiting for the comments because it's impossible to have. I don't know if
Yeah.
you found it impossible to have a sensible conversation about Scott Parker because there's definitely Parker derangement syndrome, isn't it? And yeah, I get it. I get it. And I've spent a lot of time talking to Fulham fans and talking to Bournemouth fans who literally say that, oh no, he was rubbish. We got promoted in spite of him. And you're kind of like, really? That seems a little bit extreme. What happens, Connor, if he turns out to be the biggest football genius in the world? And the mainstream media pundits who I called idiots earlier were actually right, and you have to be really defensively sound. And he's been plotting this since the middle of last season, prepping a really good defensive team. Look, I think he's better than people say. I think it's a really hard gig. It's going to be so hard for him to keep him up, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can he do it? We will find out.
Will indeed, mate. Pivoting on to Sunderland, the Black Cats coming back into the Premier League for the first time in a long time. It's good to see them back as well. Massive club up there as well. Absolute ding dong at Wembley, of which so poetic in terms of how it ended. Obviously, Tommy Watson putting the ball into the back of the net, brilliant finish. Him coming on as a substitute, and obviously then leaving to Brighton. What a way to sort of end it, really, after he went through a bit of a tumultuous time with Sunderland fans not sort of appreciating X, Y, and Z, but it comes to him. But a great way to send off, great way for Sunderland to win it as well. Probably the best way to win it, some would say, at Wembley. It's interesting with Sunderland. It's from a PSR perspective, it's interesting because they're probably in a relatively good spot. But there's a lot to do in that team, isn't there, Ben? A heck of a lot for them to stay in the Premier League.
Well, let me switch it. Let me ask you two questions. Firstly, best playoff final in about 15 years, probably, wasn't it, in terms of excitement? And secondly, here we are again talking about best players not being there. Joe Bellingham's gone to Dortmund, and you already mentioned it. The guy who scored the winning goal has gone to Brighton. So this problem goes into Sunderland as well.
Doesn't it remind you as well, Ben? It takes me back to when Sheffield United got promoted. I believe it was under Heckingbottom. And in that summer, Iliman Ndiaye was picked off them and Sander Berger was picked off them. And it's like, wow. It's just like
It's
immediately there's a problem.
Start, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, as I say, they've got a lot to do. I mean, in terms of Joe Bellingham, obviously that's the big story right now in terms of him leaving to Dortmund. I thought he improved a lot this season, but how detrimental do you think that could be to the Sunderland side, or do you think they could go out there and maybe replace him, sort of not easily as such, but maybe be able to replace those attributes? I mean, he's a big lad, he's athletic, he's physical, he's a good ball carrier, good in his duels. Feels like that's going to be a real task, doesn't it, for Sunderland to replace someone who's as iconic in that Sunderland midfield?
And right out of central midfield as well, which is such a key place. Look, the Sunderland fans, I know what they're going to say. And Christian Speakman, the whatever title he's got, is he sporting director there, or will say the same, that no, this is the model. We sign players at a young age, we develop them, and when they're ready to be sold, we sell them. So they'll keep a poker face with that, Connor, and say, no, it's not a problem. This is the model. And you mentioned the PSR position. That'll help. I don't know. I mean, look, there's plenty of minutiae in terms of when the money comes and book profit, and you can.
We're all accountants, Ben, aren't we? We're all accountants now.
It's pathetic, isn't it? Like I know anything about accounting, but what I do know, Connor, is you can pretty much argue anything on the balance sheet in terms of stretching out a 30 million quid or euros or whatever it was transfer fee. It's a big loss, isn't it? But if you were going to trust any of these three teams going up to very creatively pull out of their backside someone we've never heard of and develop them, it would be Sunderland. But Connor, how much harder is that to do? Can you give Mayenda in, out in the Championship and build him through? You've got fewer games and much harder opposition in the Premier League.
Are Sunderland one of those similar to Ipswich, where it's one of those conversations of they've gone up too soon? I mean, you cannot.
Yeah, right.
I hate that because you go up and it is such a massive financial tick box, isn't it? You've done incredibly well to get up. There's a huge boost, huge morale boost, but you get up there. But as you know, with Ipswich, it's one of those things where now you're in such a financially secure position. You're in a point of which you've gone down and you're the favourites to go straight back up again. What an unbelievable position that is from being in League One not long ago, similarly to that of Sunderland. But I don't know what it is with this Sunderland team. It just feels there's such a lack of experience, doesn't there, Ben? They've got to add so many older heads. We know they've got Brown in there, don't we? We know Luke O'Nine's in there as well, who's a bit more of an experienced head. But I mean, the one that's obviously on the rumor mill right now is Jordan Henderson. I mean, what a story arc that would be. Ajax apparently have said he's free to leave. Tommy Tuchel said to get back in the England side needs to be playing Premier League football. Could be the perfect story, couldn't it?
Yeah, and from what you hear, I saw Thomas Tuchel do a long thing. I was doing a washing up listening to him the other day, and mate, he should be Jordan Henderson's agent because
Yeah.
he sold Henderson basically as, if you've watched The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, as basically Michael Jordan coming in and raising the level of everybody in training. So I don't think that would be a bad standard. Um, Here's something that really annoys me though, Connor. The Sunderland fans are going to get sick to death of hearing about Premier League experience. And yes, you might be able to get it with Jordan Henderson, who's played at the club before and
Mm.
is, I don't know how old he is, what, like 35 or 36? Or,
34, I think.
there you go. So 34 years old. So you might be able to get it there. But Connor, are any of these three teams going to be able to sign a 30-year-old Premier League player
Mm.
with 200 appearances on his card? Can they afford to do that with the salary? You might be able to do it on loan. And one of your favourites, Calvin Phillips, went to Ipswich, but it didn't work out for whatever reason. Luton struck gold, didn't they? Ross Barkley, what a signing! But how hard is that to do? You know, rehabilitate Ross Barkley, get a brilliant season out of him, and sell him on. It's very, very. I don't want to spend the whole video saying this is impossible to do, but Henderson would be a good in between. But then, can you get a 30-year-old ready to go, even on loan, Connor?
Yeah, it's the balance of like the most important position for me, the midfield in the Premier League. I think games are won and lost in that midfield, and it's just getting that balance right when it comes to certain players in there who are going to be available and dependable throughout the year and are going to perform. I know they've been linked to Tommy Doyle as well, which don't mind. Tenacious is experienced in the Premier League once again. Is looking for a new move as well. I think they're linked to a lad called Charlie Gray in the City Academy as well, who's apparently got big things about him. But once again, it's delving into an 18 and a 19-year-old player, of which Sunderland have got a lot of inexperience. And I think for me, a little bit of a, when we use that word again, the blueprint is for Sunderland to just add that experience and add obviously quality in there as well, and be able to get into a low block as well, Ben. I think Sunderland and Leeds and Burnley are going to have to get used to going direct. They're going to have to get used to not playing out from the back, and they're going to have to get used to maybe suffering a little bit in these games. But you are right when it comes to these 30-year-old footballers. Who's probably the one that's symptomatic right now, like Thomas Souček, who appears to be on the circuit when it comes to him leaving West Ham. He's going to cost. He's like 30 years old. He's on like 100 grand a week. He's going to cost.
Perfect, though, yeah.
He's going to cost you 15 million quid, even with what, a year or two left on his contract. It's Check Decore, free agent. I know there's a lot of people speaking about him earlier on. He wants 180 grand a week, according to reports. It's abhorrent, isn't it? It's so difficult to bridge the gap. But you are right in terms of needing experience, but that Premier League experience is just, it's not attainable, I don't think.
You've just summed it up absolutely brilliantly by naming those players. So we can guess at numbers, but I suspect Sunderland's top paid player, well, let's just say they weren't getting £180,000 per week. And you've got to look at the agent's side of this as well.
Yeah,
what is Souček's agent going to be saying? Well, the only way I am possibly taking this deal is, he's not going to agree to a massive relegation wage clause cut if they're down after one season. And then that word, Connor, liability on your balance sheet. Is he going to sign a 2-year deal? No. So you got to sign him for 3 years on that money. And yeah, add that up over 3 years. It's very, very
Mm.
hard to do. So it's very easy to say, yeah, Suchek would be brilliant, wouldn't he? Perfect signing. But can you do that deal if, like Sunderland, I know they had what they had parachute payments for a couple. Well, no, they didn't because Ellis Short just trousered them and they got double relegated. So Sunderland last had Premier League TV money, like I don't know, someone in the comments will tell me what year it was, 15, 16, or
Yeah, and
something
around
like
there.
that.
Yeah.
You can't do that now with PSR and sign a Suchek on a 3-year deal on 180 grand a week or whatever it is. It's tricky.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the highest sort of paid earner after a little search on Google will be Enzo Lafay at about 67 grand a week. And then you kind of look at second and third, it's Alan Brown on 15 grand a week, Dan Ballard 15 grand. I guess that gives them more room to be able to do stuff when it comes to, once again, us being accountants. But at the same time, it's, does the club have the resources to do that? Can KLD do that? So um pivoting on to Leeds United, I guess the rhetoric around Leeds is maybe out of the last two seasons, going into the third one. If we once again go on that general consensus and you listen to reports and hear people speaking who apparently know stuff, but still, Leeds are maybe the best placed side to go up and maybe do something. Do you buy into that, Ben, or do you think it's a very easy thing to say?
Well, I'll give my view. Obviously, I'll let you lead on Leeds because you know more about them than I do. We are in a position now in football, Connor, where um, unfortunately, and I think this is the reason why people say Leeds are the best place to survive. I mean, obviously they're the best place to survive because they finished first in the
Yeah,
league and scored 100 points. I mean, so did Burnley, and it was goal difference. But you
yeah.
know, they are the highest ranked team from the Championship last season. But the argument often boils down to historic significance. You know, a golden period with Revy, a title win, a massive fan base, which is probably more relevant in terms of commercial deals. The Sunderland fans will argue about the number of people through the door, but look at the commercials and the eyeballs
Mm,
worldwide. Spend 5 minutes with someone who works in TV and watch their eyes light up when you mention Leeds United because it is a license to print money in the TV world. Unfortunately, we're in a position, Connor, where that has less relevance than Bournemouth having stayed in the Premier League for the last 3 years because of the chasms and because of PSR, unless you're going to, which some people argue is the right thing, unless you're going to do a Mr. Marinakis and what Forest did and just
yeah.
say, we can't do it unless we breach,
Mm.
but we're going to go for it. We're going to breach. If we get deducted 4 points, we're going to make the gamble and hopefully we can still survive. So when you say to me, Connor, and you know more about Leeds than I do, that they're maybe the best place from of the three, do you agree with my take that yeah, just because they were incredible through the 1970s and won titles and built up a massive worldwide fan base, it's almost less relevant now than it's ever been.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the whole. I don't want to bring them into it as well, but it's there's a lot of the big clubs now, isn't it? Sheffield Wednesday, it's Sunderland, it's all these sleeping giants that people will coin them as being in the Premier League now, and that gets you to a certain point. I think 100%. If like Leeds are going up, let's say with the greatest of respect with Burnley, I think maybe it gives Leeds a little bit of an edge. But like you just quite rightly said, Ben, with teams who have been in and around that Premier League circuit now for a period of I mean 6 to 10 years. Who cares? Who really cares? If Brentford and Bournemouth are going for a player up against Leeds United, Brentford and Bournemouth 99% of the time will get that player. And I think maybe the edge that we as a Leeds United fan had last time was maybe Marcelo Bielsa giving us that edge as well. It's not only have you got a club who's back there, similarly to that of Sunderland, you're coming back after a long time, but you've then got that almost ace card in Marcelo Bielsa, who is one of the some would argue the best coach coach that is of all time, and obviously he's referenced to by Simeone, Guardiola, etc. So that might have given us a little bit of an ace card when it comes to bringing in Rafinha, Rodrigo, Robin Koch, players of that ilk at that time. That's something to take into consideration as well. Maybe the managerial pull, which is huge as well when it comes to maybe a young player coming in, because they know they're going to be fighting against relegation throughout the entire season as well. So they need convincing, don't they? I would suggest, Ben, that for Leeds, maybe the ace card is right now. They can show them a very, very relevant example of a player coming in the Premier League and who is now up for contention as a Ballon d'Or winner in Rafinha. So that will be the blueprint. That will be the sales pitch, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Let me just talk about Bielsa first. Agree with everything you said. What Bielsa didn't have though was the 17 thing. No one was talking about the 17 in what year did Leeds? It was 1920.
Yeah.
Leeds went up, where there was this run before of basically the teams bouncing, and we're going to year 4 now, where the same 17 clubs have received the TV money of double, or God, whatever, 10x of if you're not getting parachute payments. So yeah, as much as Bielsa and his pattern of play with Bielsa, isn't it? You just go up with this glorious pattern of play, and it's just like, no, screw it. We're going to do exactly the same thing, and okay, we'll get battered one week, but score enough points to win, 9th position. And yeah, it's a great point you make about Rafinha, and we already spoke about Ross Barkley, didn't we? We mentioned Rafinha. I can talk about Liam Delap. I think Liam Delap was the best signing any of the promoted teams made
Agreed.
last season. Couldn't have gone any better. But here's another thing that is absolute killer for the promoted teams. If you're Liam Delap's agent, or whoever Liam Delap is this year that's going to negotiate with Leeds, you come to Leeds and you can say, okay, we're interested. We're sticking a £30 million release clause in the deal if you go down. And even if Liam Delap scores 12 goals, gets into England under 21s, and is arguably worth £50 million, he's going for 30 at the end of the season. So you can have Liam Delap, and it's going to go brilliantly, work out perfectly, but you ain't cashing in on him at the end of the season. And take it or leave it. Okay, we'll take it. We want him. So there's that negotiation side of it as well, that if you want to get a Rafinha, who's a unicorn, so is Ross Barkley, so is Liam Delap in terms of those deals, that you almost don't get paid on the back end of it now, because the agents have got such a fair play to Liam Delap's agent, did his job absolutely brilliantly there. And where's Liam Delap and where are Ipswich?
Exactly. Yeah, and there's a lot of conversation as well, wasn't there? With, I know the Ipswich fans and stuff who I follow online. It was 50 million for Liam Delap, 50 million. Then you see him go to Chelsea for 30 million. It's like, ooh, okay, good, but
not bad.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's another problematic standpoint when it comes to these teams going up. And yeah, it's interesting maybe when we're talking about the framework of going up as well, Ben, when we kind of look at maybe Trafford, and we look at Esteve, and we look at maybe Brownhill in there, and then you look at Sunderland, and you look at maybe Trey Hume, Dennis Sirkin, and then maybe Leeds when you look at the likes of William Yonto and maybe Al Tanaka, players who can acclimatise to the Premier League, you feel anyway when you look at their attributes, etc. Do you think that some of the, who do you think is probably best placed when it comes to the framework of going up this season? The players that maybe you feel could acclimatise with a bit of additions added, toward the squad as well.
Well, you mentioned a few of them. Can I just quiz you as a Leeds fan? Who would you put from Leeds in that? Ampadu?
Yeah, I'd probably say
Nonto?
I'd probably say we've maybe got 6. Maybe I'm being a little bit optimistic there, but I would probably go Joe Rodon, who I think's been exceptional this season. I probably would say was a Premier League player. We'll wait and see on that one. But I would then go probably Ampadu, Tanaka, And then a little bit further forward, I still would say Nonto. I think he was one of our star players last time, and I don't think football's linear, Ben. I think you can be not as great in the Championship. That doesn't mean that you're going to be poor in the Premier
What
League.
a mind-blowing concept, Connor, hey?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I always say to people, it's like, look at Patrick Bamford, scored what 15 goals in the Championship. Next season, he went to the Premier League, scored 17. So it's not always just because it's not quite worked for the Championship, it won't work in the Premier League. Yep, Liam Delap been another one,
There you go.
but yeah, and I would maybe say. Maybe I've still got a bit of a light burning for Largi Ramazani at some point. I know he's not been exposed as much to Championship football. Once again, that concept again that we've just spoken about. So I think there's maybe 4 or 5 Leeds players that can potentially acclimatise. I do look at Sunderland, and I think maybe there's. I really like Isidore. I think he's a perfect profile for the Premier League. Mayenda's interesting because wow, towards the back end of the season,
Yeah.
could he
Lafay.
acclimatise? Yeah, could he? Yeah, exactly. Lafay as well, another one. So could they have 4 or 5? Burnley, I would say maybe need to do a little bit, but defensively, we'll have to wait and see what happens there, I guess. So yeah, there's a lot of conversation there in terms of who's maybe the best setup. I'd maybe just edge Leeds, just.
I've got 2 things to say. One is about the slow burn, and one is about physicality. Okay. The slow burn, which will irritate the hell out of all the promoted teams, is that Brentford, yes, Brentford, who no one even looked at 10 years ago, can sign Keane Lewis Potter from, where did they get him from?
Was it
Hull?
Hull?
Was it?
Hull,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can sign Keane Lewis Potter, one of the better players out of the Championship, and spend 3 seasons developing him very, very gradually, slipping him in, not putting him in a position where he's going to get completely overrun by, to mention the same players, Bukayo Saka or Bruno Fernandes or, whoever. Leeds, Burnley, and Sunderland do not have the time scale to do that. So there are players, and you've mentioned most of the good examples, that if they were to go to one of the 17, would be very, very used. And I'm talking to a Leeds fan. Somerville, arguably best player in the league, certainly
Yeah.
for times of the 23-24 season. And he goes to West Ham. And okay, you can be a sub, you can take your time. We'll develop you over 3 seasons and pay back then. So there's a time. It's almost unfair to judge the players on if they're doing it from a promoted team, whereas if they're doing it for the 17. And then I was particularly thinking about Tanaka when you were saying this. And I don't want this to be a patronizing thing because it always gets leveled at Asian players as well. So I'm not saying this particularly in terms of Tanaka before people pick me up on that. But when you watch Premier League teams, we found it immediately watching Ipswich that it's not just the technique. Premier League players are either incredibly good technically, incredibly good physically, or scary, ladies and gentlemen, both. And a lot of them, you're like, hang on a minute, he's 6 feet and he's got feet like that. And that's the difficulty as well, the sheer physicality of Premier League teams. And you look at them and when you do the lineup before the game, you're like, oh God. Okay, if we can't out technique these lot, I don't even fancy us in a fight here.
That's it. It's quite right. They've got to be, you got to bring players in that are physical and athletes as well. I think football's dramatically moved on, even since the last time Leeds were in the Premier League. I feel there was a phase of which there was small, diminutive players in and around football teams.
Bale and Ronaldo, where not only are you going to be a winger, but you look like a professional swimmer and you haven't got an ounce of body fat on you and you're 6 feet tall.
100%. I think sort of in the early noughties there was a period of it as well where it was like Vieira's, Zidane's, just massive football players. But I think then it went through a little bit of a tiki taka phase where it was a little bit more based on the technical efficiency of football players. But I think it's and there still is that. But I think now they've been able to mesh what they have been, and you've kind of got this. And it's obviously helped with nutrition and diet and all these things that we now know. You've now got these specimen footballers who, I mean, you even saw it the other night. I mean, I thought it was quite symptomatic watching the international game the other night with England and Senegal, where they were powerful and they the midfield carriers and all across the pitch they had quality. And I did think to myself, it's not going to be long before an African team gets in the final, and that's probably
the African lads have always had that thing, haven't they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But now it feels like, that they are just complete when it comes to football players as
So
well.
good.
And that's why
Yeah.
we dip a lot of clubs, Premier League clubs are dipping into that market as well. So yeah, really interesting, mate, when it comes to profiles and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, so I guess unless you've got anything else you want to talk about, we've just kind of kiboshed all of their
No.
hopes now. All
Well, that's what we don't want to
No, of course not.
do, because I think, regardless of me being an EFL pervert, an Ipswich Town fan who's also speaking to a Leeds fan, we're not just sitting here because of a vested interest in teams we support and leagues
No,
we've covered.
no.
It's really important for English football that this gets sorted out. That if you score 100 points in the Championship, and the idea is that you've got a very, very slim chance
Mm.
of even finishing out of the bottom three, let alone ninth. And it's only 4 years ago, or whatever, that Leeds finished ninth and Sheffield United did the season before. And the fact that we're thinking that it's very, very difficult for that to happen again is a problem. And I genuinely, really, really hope that someone does it. But Connor, the flip side of this is not only how hard is it for a promoted team to stay up, is how hard is it for one of the 17 to get relegated? Because at times last season, Everton were useless. Palace were dreadful at the start of the season. Wolves had like 6 months of complete nonsense, and then showed up at Ipswich with Brazil's 2 starting central midfielders on a 8-match undefeated streak, and were streets ahead of them.
Was it Andre and Gomez in that
Oh,
midfield? Yeah.
they were incredible. And they
Yeah.
were terrible for the first 6 months of the season. So we're almost at Tottenham and Man United had their worst seasons
Yeah.
for decades, and they're 20 points ahead of the relegated three. So it's not just about what they do. It's about that it feels like you need a team in the 17 to have 4 managers, an injury crisis, the worst recruitment they can ever have, bad luck, terrible VAR going against them, and maybe they might just get 34 points. Do you know what I mean?
This is a question of which is a little bit off piece, and this is kind of what I'm hoping, and I'm sure what you are as well, for one or maybe all of them to survive. And it's going to be tough, but still, Brentford are an interesting one all of a sudden, aren't they? Brentford are a very interesting one because obviously Frank's gone to Tottenham. You feel at some stage that he's really going to go big on Mbeumo. Apparently, there's conversations being had. Tottenham have been very interested in Johan Visser for 2 windows now as well. You look at Justin Cochrane as well, who's the assistant manager who Brentford went for. He's rejected them and is joining Thomas Frank. And there has been rumours of Keith Andrews, or he's the front runner, Keith Andrews being the next Brentford manager. So I guess that's all up in the air. McKenna's been linked as well, but I'm not 100% sure from a personal
Terrible manager. Awful.
but I don't think there's any
Useless. They don't want him.
But there's no guarantee that works just because it's Kieran McKenna, what he's done at Ipswich. It's a very, you go into Brentford, that's the immediate results, really, I think, in the Premier League, sort of, how it looks now. It potentially could, we're trying to claw some of them in. Could Brentford be potentially vulnerable this season?
So, mate, you are a really smart guy who knows his football, talks brilliantly, who's just laid out a brilliant argument as to why a team, one of the 17, could stuff it up this season. And I was nodding along with everything you've said. Could it happen? Yeah, it could. But could we also see Brentford not even make the right managerial hire, have a real struggle next season, maybe hire someone and sack them and hire in somebody else, maybe lose and Burmo and Visser, as you're saying, and still get 48 points.
Yeah, it's sad, isn't it?
I don't want to be this guy. I don't know what people in the comments, Connor, are going to say, oh, Ben's a cheerful ray of sunshine this summer morning. I've just spent a year going through it, is all I will say. Just quickly, Connor, brilliant video. I was doing some research on Thomas Frank. It's on Monday Night Football. It's quite old, but he... I think everybody would argue that Thomas Frank knows more about how to survive the Premier League than Connor or myself or anybody in the comments. And he did his little 3-point thing to Carragher and Dave Jones, and he put it as fitness, set pieces, and defending. So I'm sure Sam Allardyce would be very, very happy with that. But he said those were the non-negotiables as the starting point,
Wow.
and he's been the master of it. And a lot of the annoying things thrown at Ipswich that are going to be thrown at Leeds, Burnley, and Sunderland. Um, if they'd maybe been a bit more Thomas
Mm.
Frank and a bit less McKenna, Russ Martin, or not even Stevie Cooper, Ruud van Nistelrooy, maybe they would have got closer. Would they have survived? I don't know. But yeah, check that video out as well for
Yeah,
a
definitely. Just to add on Frank as well, like I don't maybe think people quite understand how he's transitioned into the Premier League from the Championship and what a team, what style of team really Brentford were in the Championship in comparison. It wasn't like they were all out attacking, but they were a team who built up out wide. They were a team who overloaded. They were very much focused on bombing the fullbacks forward, getting everybody into the box, and basically
Emrama and Watkins, yeah.
Ben Rama, Watkins, yeah, and it was they were brilliant to watch. And obviously going into the Premier League, it is interesting when you say stuff like that, Ben, because they have had to adapt and they have had to acclimatise to the monstrous velocity that is the Premier League and what it delivers. So yeah, really, and maybe the pragmatism, hopefully, is something that is a blueprint for some of the other managers coming up. They can see that this is how you at least maybe just lessen that gap a little bit and those incremental things. I mean, something to just throw at you as well, Ben. Three of the promoted sides last season were in the bottom five when it comes to set pieces. That is just out. That's just outrageous. That shouldn't happen. It should
No,
not
what,
happen.
what I will say as a fan of one of those sides is there should be some kind of pro rata in of set piece stats because obviously a lot of these are compared. You're comparing Ipswich's record of scoring and conceding goals from set plays against teams that have way more attacking set plays, and you're comparing that one
True.
number
Yeah.
against way less defensive set plays. So I think there's a bit of a false equivalence. I mean, some of the data, but kind of winning teams always nail set play. Look at Ipswich's set play stats when they got promoted, best in the division, and they go straight to worst in the division. So even your strengths in one respect. And
Mm.
oh my god, yeah, have fun with the shirt pulling, the physicality,
Yeah.
and I tell you what, Leeds, Burnley, and Sunderland fans, don't you dare tackle anybody. Not allowed in the Premier,
Would-
especially if they play for Arsenal, Man United, Liverpool. Those
yeah.
players will complain about being tackled.
Do you know the funniest one was? I saw like Trey Hume has been. I absolutely love some of his tackles. To be fair, he did one on Manor Solomon. It's a brilliant tackle, just a tough tackle. He did one on Ben Berrettine Diaz in the playoff final. Brilliant
Oh,
tackle.
and then gave it the fist bump
Yeah,
afterwards.
yeah,
Yeah.
man and ball. But Sunderland fans were in the comments saying, "Yeah, this is brilliant." And I just said, "Look, when you get to the Premier League, that will be based on impact, and that will be based on him,
I'll
touching
be
the
red
man as
carded.
well. Be straight red, yeah,
Yeah.
straight red." So, yeah, you have
And
to get
Connor,
used to
really
that.
quickly, under Kieran McKenna in League One, and yes, I understand League One, Ipswich had way more money than everyone else, and they were the bad guys. I get it, I get it. But and in the Championship, Ipswich never got a red card. It was like the last minute of the season in League One, Ipswich got a red card. Go and look at Ipswich's disciplinary record last year. I think it was like 5 games in a row at one point. It felt like and poor old Jack Clark would get substituted. Got loads of red cards. It's hard, man.
Yeah, yeah. I remember Junior Firpo. I think this year he's had a pretty decent discipline record in the Championship. Over 2 seasons, he got 19 yellow cards. It's just like Jesus. Okay, right. We'll leave it there, mate. Guys, as I'm sure you know, we have our EFL aficionado by the side of me, Benjamin Bloom. Go check it out. He's flying at this moment in time. Hopefully, you'll be seeing us together very, very soon as well on this channel, and more will be released in due course. But Ben, thanks so much for coming on, mate. Everybody, get on over to his channel and let us know in the comment section below if you want to see more of this stuff as well. And as always, we will see you in a bit. Cheers.